Okay, today we're going to talk about African civilizations, our next unit, Unit 3. Go ahead and take out your notes and your note packet. Okay, first I want you to fill in the thinking bar terms. These are 2 vocabulary words that you need to add to your vocabulary list. The first one is succession, the order of power or the process of inheriting power. And animism, the belief that gives inanimate objects life and soul. Okay, when you think of the geography of Africa, think of it as the second largest continent in the world. When you look at the geography, there are 2 large deserts at the top of Africa, the Sahara Desert in the north, and at the bottom it's mainly green and very grassy. Okay, this picture shows that there is desert up towards the top of Africa, and at the bottom of Africa, it's mainly green and grasslands and jungle. With Africa, there are different climates all over Africa, depending if we're talking about the north of Africa or the south of Africa. There are rivers, like the Lambezi River and the Niger River. And Africa is most known for trading salt and gold, iron and copper. Okay, these are some of the trade routes that are around Africa. We're going to start with West Africa first. We're going to talk about Timbuktu and what's traded up in these 3 trading kingdoms. Go ahead and write on the top of your paper, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. Circle that, and next to it, I want you to write, get my subway, or get Miss Creech subway. I always want you to be thinking of acronyms and things and tricks and ways for you to memorize things about all of these units that we talk about. Get my subway, Ghana, Mali, or Songhai, is a good way for you to remember that Ghana was the first West African kingdom. Mali then took over Ghana as the second West African trading kingdom, and Songhai, which is the area on your map that's circled in orange, is the last trading kingdom in West Africa. Each of them sort of took over and succeeded, which was one of your vocab words, the power. So Ghana was first, then Mali, then Songhai. Get my subway is your acronym. They're all located near the Niger River. They're trading gold and salt. Timbuktu is smack in the middle of those kingdoms. Timbuktu is a big trading civilization or a big trading kingdom. Timbuktu was really, really rich because it was sitting right on the center of trade. And when you're having no choice but to go through Timbuktu, of course, they're able to sort of control that that trade area, and they're getting richer and richer. That trade route is called the Trans-Saharan trade route. The religion that they're participating in is Islam. However, this is the only place in Africa that is following animism, which is another religion, but it's sort of a way of living. They believe that spirits exist with all objects. Everything has a spirit, the tree, the plant, the animals, the bug crawling on the ground, and that everything has sort of feelings and spirits that exist within it. So while they're Islamic, they're also following and practicing animism, which is just sort of like a religion or a thought or a philosophy. Ghana is your second West African kingdom. It's between the Niger River and it's controlled by kings. That is what their leaders are. And they're all Muslims in this kingdom. Okay? In case you see a map on the SOL that is just highlighted like this, you need to be able to recognize that they are asking for you to be able to tell them that Ghana, Mali, or Songhai is in the western part of Africa. If it's pointing to the right in East Africa, then they're probably asking you a question about where was the first early human found. Lucy, or Australopithecus, was found in East Africa, Ethiopia. But for the purpose of this presentation, we're focused on the West African trading kingdoms where gold and salt was traded, and the trans-Saharan trade route. Okay, in your notes section, go ahead and briefly describe the geography and the climate of Africa. How would the desert affect trade? How would the grassy jungles at the bottom affect trade? Mali is your next and your next West Africa trade route, or your West Africa kingdom. It controls the salt and the gold trade. It's on the Niger River. Mali is also most famous for Mansa Musa, who was a king who controlled that kingdom. He was Islamic, so therefore he followed the Hajj and went on a trip, which we'll talk about when we study Islam more in depth. But the Hajj is basically a trip that you make back to Mecca, and it takes a long time to get there. So therefore, because he was gone for a very long time outside of Mali, while he was extremely wealthy, he was not there to protect his kingdom, and eventually it was succeeded because of disputes and taken over. Mansa Musa's friend was Marco Polo. Marco Polo was depicted in this picture. He was a trader and an explorer, and Mansa Musa was the king in this picture, and Marco Polo is the one on the camel. Okay, these are just some Marco Polo's travels that you should be familiar with as an important person from this unit. Mansa Musa and Marco Polo. Go ahead and define what succession means in your notes. How did that affect Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, or Get My Subway, which was first, second, and third? Songhai is your last West African kingdom. Again, still located on the Niger River, up near the Sahara Desert, still trading gold and salt up in this sort of western part of Africa. They are still, or they're just starting to become Amanistic and then Muslim. Okay, with Songhai, they are the ones that are really making Timbuktu thrive as a trading sort of center. And eventually they're succeeded because of fighting internally with their kingdom and other invaders coming in. Okay, this is a picture of Songhai and Western Africa. This is another picture of what trading probably looked like. They used open air markets. They were trading gold, salt, and then also the things that they were growing to survive in their kingdom. Okay, this is another picture of the Western kingdoms. If you happen to see a picture like this on the SOL, please look for being able to remember those three places and not pick a place that is in East Africa. Ghana is first, Mali is second, Songhai is third. Axum is in East Africa. Axum is known as being very wealthy and being the first Christian kingdom probably ever in the world. It is now Muslim. It did become Muslim during the Islamic expansion, which we'll talk about mid-school year. Okay, Ethiopia and Axum is more or less the same place. They are located between the Red Sea and the Upper Nile River. It took over because from our Egypt unit, you learned that Cush took over Egypt and kind of became a very wealthy trading state in East Africa. Axum takes over as being a very big trading place in East Africa and is extremely wealthy. If you see this picture on the bottom, please make sure that you know that that is the stele of Axum, and it is a landmark that you should be familiar with in case you're having to pick locations of places. Okay, this is where Axum is. It's more or less Ethiopia. Again, this is where we found Lucy and Zimbabwe. We're going south in Africa now. Zimbabwe is in the south of Africa. It is located between the Zambezi River and the Limpopo rivers. So the Niger River is up in western Africa, and the Zambezi and the Limpopo rivers are near Zimbabwe. The big difference of what is traded down there is farming, gold trade, and ivory. So in the West Africa, we're only seeing gold. And in the south part of Africa, we are seeing gold and ivory. The Great Zimbabwe, we'll see a picture of it in a minute, sometimes called the Great Stone Dwelling or the Great Stone Building. Okay, this is where Zimbabwe is. It's very much in the jungle and in the green part of Africa. Okay, this is a picture of the Great Stone Dwelling in Zimbabwe. All of these stones were laid without mortar, which we use today to build buildings. Back then, they didn't use any mortar at all, and all of these stones were stacked upon one another. This is another picture of the Great Stone Dwelling, or the Great Zimbabwe.